All right. So for anyone watching the recording, we are doing the sky in a nice soft pink, and we're painting the top 2/3. So we did a horizon line straight across where the bottom third is white, and we're painting the whole top 2/3 pink for our pink background. And to make pink, I did white with a tiny touch of red. And that is where we're at. So if anyone's watching the recording, or you all know, you can certainly pause and go and then pause again and find spots to find certain details. So it's nice having the recording available so you can kind of check back in on techniques or placement details that we may discuss. As you all know, we talk about those things. So you, as the artist, can make those choices in our class. And it makes such a world of difference for people to know they have choices when they paint. Kind of opens up such a new awareness for so many of, oh, I can actually choose what I want to put and where. So I think many of you know that, but I think it's important to continue to iterate, even with friends and family that paint, or even creating new things, just being open-minded just to what happens. Many of you do that in these classes, which makes me so happy. All right. So I'm just gonna try to make this line a little straighter down here. Doesn't have to be perfect. We're gonna put things here. Amazing. So I'll give everybody a few minutes to paint that background. No rush. Jean, great to see you. So glad you could join tonight. It's Miss Janice. Jean, did you already get started before tonight's class? No? Okay. Jean had a busy day. She didn't get a head start on all of us. All right. All right. So I'm painting the top pink and I'm cleaning my brush. And everybody else is painting their top pink and then clean your brush. We'll be very thoughtful of we'll do our ground next. So we'll truly do all the background pieces first. And then we will work our way to the foreground, because there are so many items in the foreground. I'm sure you all are counting them by now. So clean off that brush, and we're going to mix a nice light gray color together for the snow. So I already have white on my plate. If you need to add a little more, feel free. And if you're not quite done your pink yet, don't worry. But I'm going to take a little dollop of black. Put a little dollop of black on my plate. And I'm going to use the same big brush for the snowy area. And I'll shift this up so you can see my snowy area here. And I'm going to mix a very light gray. The gray is going to represent snow. And we'll do doing some shaping in the foreground. So I have just a tiny bit of black paint right here. Look how much that is. It's not very much at all. I'm going to grab some of my extra white and I'm going to mix a light gray color. And again, with painting and finding the right colors, just take your time to find the right gray and make sure it's well mixed. Okay, just mixing this around. And with the gray, you just take an extra minute just to make sure there's no streaks. So kind of like tap your brush on both sides just to make sure there's no streaks that are kind of coming through. And my gray's fairly light. Guess what? I might make it a little darker. It's a little scary, but I can try. And you could use water when we apply and start doing some of the layering for our snowy ground in front. You can use this color, and you can always add some lighter spots, so no big deal. So I have a nice gray. I'm kind of doing a little bit of paint management of not having my brush be too goofy. And then what we're going to do is I want you to think about like layering hills or different kind of patches. So for me, I might do like a little bit of a line, and I'm using the flat side of my big brush, and I might do a little bit of a slope coming down. I might do 2 or 3 slopes basically.
Megan,
So
what color did you mix to make the gray?
white and black. Maybe I'll just do 2. You can play with this here. So I just did 2 slight slopes. Maybe I'll just do another little one right here. Yeah. And then what we're going to do is you can start to fill in the gray. The top side of the slopes, like where the line is actually going to be lighter. So I'm going to start filling in on the underside of these lines, but I'm leaving a little bit of white space. So you can see my line for this slope is right here. I'm going to leave a little bit of white space underneath it. And I'm just going to paint down to the next slope. And that's going to allow me to remember where that line was, but it's also going to allow me to keep the top of that hill a little lighter. And one way I can do that is I can use a little bit of water on my brush to also just soften it a little bit. We want the top side of our hills to be a little lighter and the bottom side of these slopes to be that gray color. So play around with this a little bit. You can't really mess this up. The top side of the slope will be lighter. So filling in like the bottom side of that slope first is not a bad idea, but just playing around with our colors and the use. And I'll use white paint to actually create snow on the top of those slopes. So I'm not too worried about that, but I had to get those lines in place for somewhere to start. I'm kind of leaving a little bit of a white buffer going up to that line because I'll be using white and gray to kind of soften that in. So this is, again, it's just experimenting. How do we create slopes where it's a little lighter in areas? And you can see those tiers are separating a little bit, right? So we're using that white space to kind of hold like the top of that slope a little bit more true. And then we can play around with a little bit of white, and you can kind of soften with a little bit of a lighter gray. You can kind of soften the top side of those slopes or hills or whatever you want to call them. See how I just soften the top of that? And you can make those as light or as soft gray as you wish. So just be playful here on how you fill in your snowy foreground. And I'm just doing some soft brush strokes left and right. And if you have a little bit of patience, the colors will start to blend together a little bit. So you can feel the paint getting a little more sticky.
No, thank you. Okay, go ahead.
So I'm being really playful with how I use my white and my gray and mixing my lighter color here. So anything can happen. So just have some fun. We're just using white to create the top side of those hilly slopes. And you can see it's just starting to blend in. And the thing with acrylic, as you all know, is that it dries rather quickly. So you can go in and add more paint if you need to lighten areas. But you can see how the dark and the light colors are creating surface depth, right? The shaded color of the gray. And you can even make this darker too if you want to get a little crazy here. I don't judge. You could even make the bottom of this slope a little darker. That's really dark, but I'll show you how to blend it in. With a little water on your brush. Don't hesitate to use water on your brush to help with the blending. You could make some of these slopes a little darker, like on the bottom side. So you can play with how much contrast you want. But the more important thing is having that lighter context on top, in my opinion. On the top side of the hill. It's kind of like when we paint clouds in the sky. Sometimes we do a little bit of extra white paint on the top side of the clouds for the light to hit the top side of those clouds. So this is very similar. And you can always change the serenity here of our field. We're going to certainly add a lot of trees in here, but we're just spending a minute and we won't spend too much more time here. We're just getting a kind of base colors here for our snowy foreground. We don't really do this too often either, this technique. Sometimes, but I guess it depends on the class. But the nice thing is just starting somewhere and like letting it dry and coming back to it is a-okay, always. So I'm just gonna go nice and soft. And you can switch brushes if you need to. This brush I'm using is pretty weathered. I just kind of grabbed it out of my collection. It's not one of my newer ones. So if you switch brushes, you might have a better brush, but you don't need to be, we're not striving for perfection here. We're just getting basic coat on. And I'll transition us in just one more minute to do the next step. There's Nikki. Nikki, great to see you. Welcome. All right. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't know how to change my name's actually Trish, but I don't know how to change the screen
Oh,
name.
that's so funny, Trish. So on your window, you can click your three dots and you can click rename. I can actually do it for you.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I got you. Okay, well now we're gonna call you by your
that's so
real
much
name.
better.
Trish.
So if I was ignoring you, that was why. I'm like, who's Nikki?
Oh, you're
And then I
so
realized,
fun.
oh, that's
You're
me.
all good. Here, I'll pin my screen and make it a little bigger for everyone. No worries. So my bottom, it just has some basic colors and I am going to just let it dry. That's really the one of the most important things here. And it's not perfect, like it's not done in my opinion, and that's okay. All right. Do folks want a couple more minutes to play with the bottom, or are folks feeling pretty good? You let me know. Okay, I'm gonna take silence as we can move on. And we're gonna come back to the bottom, so don't worry too much. So I'm going to clean my brush and we are going to add some pink pine trees in the top in the background, which is going to be really fun. And we might add a couple of blue trees as well. So this is really fun. We don't do pink pine trees that often. And we're going to grab a smaller brush too. So we're going to make, you can see here I have a pink color. We're going to make a little bit darker of a pink than what we have here. And I'm going to grab just a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller of a brush. You don't need to go too much smaller, but let me see what I have here for sizes. I have these two here, which is like a 4 and a 5. But if you have like a 4 flat tip brush, like one of these, this is a good neck size if you have one of these. Otherwise, you can use a 4 or a 5. And when I say 4 and a 5, there's numbers sometimes on the sides of brushes. Just use a small to medium sized brush. You don't need to use a super detailed brush right now because these trees are going to be pretty funky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this. It's like a 4 flat tip brush. I'm going to make, I'm going to take some of my red and my pink is gone. So I have to make more, but I'm going to make a little bit darker of a pink, which is basically just less white. And I want to make enough of it so I don't run out. And luckily I'm doing this color on top of my other pink so I can tell it's actually going to be darker, which is quite helpful. But the trick here is making enough of your darker pink. And we're just going to put 2, maybe 3 pink pine trees in the back, just for some fun flair here. Warming up for the Valentine's Day holiday here. All right, so you can see how this pink is actually a little darker than that pink. That's what I wanted. And I think this will be enough. We'll see. And I'm being patient. I'm kind of making sure my brush is well covered. So we're going to do some tall, funky trees in the background. We're going to do some long tree trunks first. And if you have a flat side of this brush, you can turn it on the side. So sometimes when you hold your brush, you have a flat side and you have like a more of a narrow side brush stroke. Use the narrow side brush stroke if you can. And I'm going to do kind of like 1, 2, and like 3 trees. And they are going to start at the top and I'm gonna kind of do placement. So I'm gonna do a single line down. I'm gonna do another one. I'm just going to the top of the ground. I'm not going on top of, like, on the ground itself. And I'm just gonna do one more over on the left. Kind of keeping the middle open intentionally. But if you can put them wherever you want. Now I'm gonna try to use this brush for, this tree trunk's a little wobbly. It's okay, move it over a little bit. I'm gonna try to use this brush to do the branches. I'm gonna do a different style tree branches in today's class. I'm just gonna do some kind of flaring out, just some kind of like more abstract tree branches. And they're kind of thick in brush strokes. If you want more thin, and these are kind of tall and lean pines. So they're gonna be tall and lean the whole way down. So I'll bring this down a little bit. If you want to use a different brush, you can, but I'm alternating from the left to the right side. And I'm just doing some branches, and these are going to be, this is kind of a fun, I'm doing little dabs. And when I paint trees, I paint with a like texture mindset. I don't paint with like a stick-like brush mindset, which is hard. And if anybody, you all know, or most of you know, trees can be hard to paint. So just find a style of tree that you like and just work your way down. I'm doing really like fun, chunky kind of style branches tonight. I'm not doing like crazy delicate branches. We're going to do different style branches on our other blue trees, but this is just kind of a fun background element. And I did the same kind of width of the tree all the way down. If you wanted to get a little wider, you could. We're going to be putting big blue trees over some of this anyways. So this is just kind of a fun background addition. So don't worry too much. So I'm just going, you can do branches that are straight out, kind of horizontal. You can do branches that are more diagonally down. Just, again, find a style that works for you. And I like to imagine kind of the shape of the tree, little broken branches. You can see I kind of have gaps in between. And I can always come in here with a smaller brush and make it like look a little bit more refined. That's fine. My cabin is also going on top of this in the middle. So this is, again, the cabin's going to go right on top in the middle. So some of these tree parts you won't even see. But I'll probably come in here with a little bit of a smaller brush just to do some like little bit of refinement on some of the branches, maybe make some of the branches a little bit more narrow on the end. You can have some more gaps in your trees if you wanted to. So you can see this one has some more gaps in between. It's okay for your trees to look a little different. And sometimes it's fun trying different styles of trees, you know? That's how we grow as creative people, as we try different things. And as you know, I love being a risk taker in these classes, just to demonstrate what it's like to try something new. So I'm going to just grab a smaller brush just for a little bit of refinement. And just kind of play with like where there may be little sticks and twigs, maybe extend some of these branches, excuse me. So if anybody wants to do a little bit of like cleanup work here, you can play with a little bit of a smaller brush to, you know, refine. I was really just having fun with these trees because I know we're going to put a lot of stuff on top of them. And it's just kind of creating like a secondary design in the background. So it's kind of fun to add a little bit of abstract kind of flair You'd always have to paint something that looks realistic and perfect, right? This is more impressionism, sort of. But I know some of you have your own style and some of you may want this to like look super pristine, and I encourage you to do that if you wish. That's why sometimes coming in with a little brush, just I'm making some of these branches just look a little bit more clean on the edges. That sometimes helps. So we're not going to spend a ton of time here, but I want to, and I just flew through that, and I know that. So we'll keep an eye on the clock. Everybody can have several more minutes to kind of play with these trees and refine. And again, we're putting a big A-frame cabin like on top of this. And I did a ton of big trees. Your trees may not look like mine. Mine are very large. I took up a lot of the background space. Yours do not need to look like that. So you do you, but we are going to add in a couple of tall blue tree trunks as well that will start to pair and match with the foreground trees. So I went for like a crazy forest from behind. And that was my choice as an artist, to do big pink trees. Just what I was feeling tonight. And I'm going to let these dry. So acrylic, I usually use acrylic paint in these classes, but as you know, use whatever supplies you have on hand. I had a lady in a class this week. She said all I had was oils, and she used oils in our class, and it was so great. So it's so fun to see, you know, people can join these classes and just use whatever you have. And that's all good. And if anybody has a little bit of any areas that are like a little out of control with your pink, you can always use some light pink to kind of like come in and clean up like in between. So you can use a lighter color, look at this, as an eraser to kind of come in and kind of make a chunky area a little more clean to the eye. So there's a lot of ways to kind of manipulate your work along the way. So don't ever get discouraged if something happens and you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to fix this? First of all, you can just ask me, I'll help you from afar on how to help you fix something. But just be open-minded that you can typically paint over something to make a correction. Okay. Many of you know that, but I'm just reinstating. So I'm just playing with a little bit of a lighter pink, just kind of going in between some of these branches, just to kind of refine here and there as folks are finishing up this space. And then we're going to add some blue trees as well. So we're going to continue to layer upon, and we will sketch our A-frame, I promise. We're just going to do a couple of tall, like blue tree trunks, just to see how that looks. And if anybody wants to bring them to life, you can certainly do that. But we're going to add some blue tree trunks to start to bring in the blues, which will be really fun. So I'm going to be patient and let this dry for a minute. I'm pretty close to letting this dry. But what I'll do is we'll do our first little flip and reveal here. If anybody wants to, I'll remove my pin and switch to gallery view. Does anybody want to show off your work on how it's going? Because I bet you everybody's pink trees are different. Nice. Okay, Sharon, yours are definitely smaller than mine. Oh, Diane's are so elegant. Nice. Jenny did green. Jenny, it's all good. No judgment zone. All right. Jean and Janice are working away. Susan, I like yours. They're cool. They're really cool. So don't hesitate, like using two brushes, two different size brushes too. Here comes Terry's. Nice, ladies. You can use a secondary brush, right, to do fine tuning work if you need to. But I like what you all have so far. Now you tell me, do you all want a couple more minutes to play with these trees? You can give me a thumbs up. Yeah, okay. So we'll leave everybody a minute to play with these trees. And if folks have questions, let me know, but we'll let the backgrounds dry. Mine are really big. I don't know what happened. It escalated quickly over here tonight. Big pink trees. All right. And we can start to think about what some of our next steps are with regards to what is our next color going to be per se. As people are playing with those big trees. So in the inspiration, there is like a bluish purple that is like the next primary color. And this is a really fun opportunity for you to find what color you want that to be. You could use blue. So this is like a blue lake kind of color. This is a Blick paint that I'm using tonight. It's like a really basic acrylic paint. Sometimes I use these in our classes, sometimes I don't. But it's like a very royal blue. This will work if I wanted to add, like if anybody's feeling doing like a purpley blue color tonight, you could totally add a little red to this to make it a purpley blue. It could be really pretty. I might do that just to see what it looks like. I still want like the primary to like look like a blue, but it might have a purple tinge. So I'm going to be a little experimental here for a minute and just play with blending a color for a hot minute. So I'm just going to clean this big brush. And if you're not with me, it's okay. I'm just going to talk through this experiment with you for consideration. So I'm also going to grab, let's see, my light. Susan, go ahead. Do you have a question? Are you okay? Okay, you're good. Just waving like Miss America over there.
No, I'm trying to show Jenny how I'm already covered in paint.
Oh, you're already covered in paint. Well, that's pretty normal, isn't it, Susan?
I don't even know how.
All right, give me just a minute here. I'm just plugging something in. Just getting a cord for one of my lights. Let's see if this works. Give me just 1 minute. So you can play with what you might want to use for your bluish purple color or your blue color. So that's a choice you can make. Just grabbing a light cord here for my light. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to mix this with you here. So I'm going to take a little bit of red and just mix it with a little bit of this blue to see what kind of purple kind of tinge I can get. I'm just having fun here. I need a lot more red than that. Whoop, let's see how that goes. That might be too much. So I want you to choose the color of this blue that you're going to be using as a primary usage. Ooh, look at that. It just got like a little darker. It kind of turned, that's actually really pretty. It turned from like a royal blue to like I don't want to say a navy, but it's really quite nice actually. It's really dark. It's not so dark in person. I'm going to grab a little bit of white to lighten it just to see what happens. And I could add more red to this as well, which I will. Because it's not hurting it. It's just making it a kind of a more blue purpley color, but it's really quite pretty. So find a color that you like. And we're going to do a couple of tree trunks. But we're going to do a lighter version of tree trunk. So we're not going to use this as your tree trunk color. We're going to actually add white to this and create a lighter version. So I have some white over here. See that lighter color that's happening? I want you to create a lighter version of this new color. That's the intent of this step. So it's kind of like a lighter, I don't want to say a light blue, but a lighter blue. So again, take your time, find colors that you like. I want you to have a base color and then a lighter color. And the lighter color is what we're going to use for our tree trunks. And we're just going to put a few in. And they're going to be fairly narrow, so I'm going to switch to a smaller brush, but I'm using this bigger one right now just to mix. And this has turned into a really pretty periwinkle color, which I kind of like. Okay. So I'm just going to do a couple of really skinny tree trunks, and I'm going to find just a brush, I don't know, a 4 or 5 brush with a long bristles on it, kind of like with a good amount of bristles with long bristles. So like this one's a good one. This is probably a number 5. Yeah, this is a number 5. So I'm going to get some of this light blue, the lighter blue on here. A little bit of paint management. Make sure your brush isn't too goopy. And I'm going to do 2 single tree trunks next to this tree. So I'm just you got to have a little confidence here, ladies and gents. So I'm going to start at the top and go down. Let's see. So I'm just going to go with a steady hand and just do a tree trunk down. And I'm just going to refine it. I might make it a little wider. It's up to you. You could also make it a little lighter too if you wanted to. I'm just starting here. Can always make it lighter. And I'm off centering these tree trunks. I'm not putting them in the center because the center is really, I'm holding space for my A-frame visually. So that's why all these trees are off centered. It's because I'm holding space visually for my house that's going to go in here. So this is a little tedious. So just take your time. A little bit of a tree trunk here. We're not going to do too many of these, but this is just a really fun detail. I'm going to add white on a lighter color on top of this. It's a little dark for me. So just finish what you're doing and then you can consider to do the same or not. I'm just going to do one more. I might layer another one just really close nearby here. Using my pinky to stabilize my hand, dragging my pinky down my canvas. And your tree trunks can be different sizes if you want them to be. This one's going to be a little skinnier. But take your time here. Don't listen to me. Just do your thing. I want you to be happy with these tree trunks before you move on to the next step. You'll always take the time to layer like this, which is kind of fun. Kind of fun. And of course, I think about balance in these classes. So I'm going to put one skinny one over here on the right too. Some of you might have predicted that coming. I'm going to do one skinny one as straight as possible. Wish me luck. Just one skinny one over here on the right. Just to kind of complement the scene. Because on the right side of the canvas and on the left, we're going to do big, heavy blue trees. These are just details in the distance. It's going to start to tie everything together. And if you want to add a little bit of a lighter color, maybe add a little bit of white with this color and do a little bit of textured detailed work to these tree trunks, feel free to do that. And I'll show you what I'll do in just a minute. First, I need to make these a little straight and a little more even. Sometimes our trees get a little wider. It's okay. We acknowledge these things happen. I'm going to take a little bit, I have a little bit of white nearby. I'll show you what I'm doing. Bringing a little bit of white, just a little bit into this kind of color. I'm just going to add a little bit of texture, a little bit of lighter texture, just some dabs here and there to these trees. Little patch here, little patch there, just to add a little bit of texture. It will lighten it up in some areas. It will add, like, there's light hitting this tree here and there. I'm just doing some vertical brush strokes. And this is just a little bit of detail work, but we'll be able to see this work and appreciate this work. Just doing little lines here and there, and it's making a big difference. It's kind of creating a little bit of lightness on a solid colored object. And I'm not going for, life-changing, birch bark texture here, like Susan does a good birch tree. Jenny too. And I'm not striving for that. I'm just putting a little bit of lighter color. That's it. Okay, and I'm going to bring it close, and I'm going to show you how messy it looks, but it's all I wanted, right? Look at just a little touch of color inside of those trees. And then we're going to let it dry, and we're all going to do a little dance. No, I'm just kidding. You don't have to dance. We're all going to stretch. We're going to let those dry, and we're going to do our A-frame house next, right on top. So I'm going to find a pencil, and I'm going to find a ruler or a flat edge to try to make a perfectly straight A-frame. You can use a flat edge when you're ready. We want this to dry though, so some of my paint's a little wet, but we'll give it a minute. Find a ruler, a magazine, a piece of cardboard, wave that picture around. There's my ruler, it was hiding. Yep, mine's wet too. I'm very excited. We could always mix our brown too. If we want to let our canvas dry, we can mix our brown while our picture's drying too. I might do that. So there's lots of ways to make brown. Red, blue, and yellow all mixed together will make brown. Yellow is an important component of brown, believe it or not. And you can use any brush. I'm using like that medium 4. And I'm gonna mix, I have some of this blue right here. I'm just gonna grab a little bit of it. A little bit of blue with the yellow will give me a green. And I'm gonna bring some red into it. And then we say a little prayer that turns into brown. Let's just mix this. There we go. All right. I use very little blue. It was more yellow and green, or sorry, yellow and red. I am getting a chocolate brown. So blue is less important than we think. It's need a little bit. Some of you may have a brown if you have a fancy paint colored package. You could use what you have. But I'm mixing this while my canvas dries. I went a little heavy-handed with my tree accent color. Okay, so I have brown. I'm gonna let that dry. Sorry, I'm gonna keep that on my plate. It's not gonna dry. It'll be there ready for me. And then you can figure out your A-frame size and position. I have a clear ruler, which is super fun. And I have a pencil. And I'm gonna shift this over a little bit. So I want you to first, this is the easiest thing, is find where you want the peak of your roof to be. This will tell you, this will kind of say, okay, this is how big I want it to be, right? So so in the picture, it's actually there's a lot of pink space up here in the picture. It's about halfway in the picture. I might try that. If you want to do a bigger A-frame, you can make it big, right? The bigger the A-frame, the closer you are to it as the viewer. I'm going to do mine about halfway. I'm going to try to do a little A-frame. And I'm going to use my pencil and just do a little dot for the tip, that top of the A-frame. And then this is where you can play with your angles. And this is where we get so excited for using a ruler, right? Whew. Find one angle that you can kind of imagine being the same on the other side. In the picture, it's pretty steep of an angle. So I'm just going to be courageous. Oh boy. Of course, I'm smudging the blue paint underneath, which is fine because I'm going to put brown there anyways. And I'm just going to do a pencil line down. So be brave and do a line down. And just repeat on the other side. If you need to change your angle, you can. We're either going to have A-frame houses or teepees. I think they're going to start out looking like teepees, but I think they're going to come out looking like houses in the end here. There, I have a tent happening. That's what's happening over here. So I'll show you what mine looks like. It looks like a triangle. I didn't do the bottom line because you don't really need to. And then, ladies and gents, we are going to paint it in. We're going to do it. We're going to do the windows and stuff on top. I think that will be easier. We're going to fill in the whole thing with brown paint. Okay. So use any brush you want. And then we'll do all the detail work on top. The reason we're doing our house now is because we are layering in trees around our house and in front of our house. So we do things with intent in these classes, even though we're a little crazy along the way. But I'm going to paint in, and I'm doing nice smooth brush strokes. We'll add snow on the house and make it look all cozy with windows and stuff after, but let's just get some brown paint down. Do some nice smooth brush strokes. You don't want the paint to be too goopy here, otherwise it will take forever to dry. So even though it looks streaky right now, don't worry. Try to have nice clean edges on those lines too. So take your time on the edge of the house to have a nice clean line. Very important. And we'll do a second coat, but let's just get one on nice and thin. Don't worry about brush strokes. Anyone has any questions, please let me know. You can always switch brushes if you need to. I'm just doing a rough brown line on the bottom. I'll probably get a smaller brush for the peaks and the corners of the house, just so it's nice and clean. Going right up to the pencil mark. We're going to let it dry. Now, if you're using acrylic, it's going to dry pretty quickly, which is terrific. Just 2 or 3 minutes and it should dry. And then you can do a second coat. So just don't rush it. I'm going to grab a smaller brush, kind of fill in the corners. Filling in the tippy top. Now this A-frame is going to have some snow on it. It's going to have windows. All after. I just did a nice kind of fairly clean line on the bottom. We're going to put snow down here and lots of things. See how much time we have. And then use your judgment when things are drying up. You can do another coat. We are going to do 2 coats of the brown here. before we put everything else on, which a second coat of brown is like butter here. It's gonna look so clean and so good. But it's getting it's still a little smudgy for me. So I'm just gonna take my time and maybe do a thicker second coat of brown. Want to make sure it's filled in for sure. I'm also not using incredibly high quality paint tonight. This is like a really basic acrylic paint. Sometimes when you use higher quality paints, the pigment will stick differently. So some of you may have no problem here with your second coat. It might look good, it might be clean and ready to go. Some of us it might be a little different. So we just have to acknowledge that. It's gonna go nice and slow. Some areas it's sticking down nicely. Some areas it's giving me a brush stroke. So just have a little patience with it. Let it dry. Okay. So mine looks a little patchy in some areas, but I'm just going to let it dry. And then we can start, once this is drying and off and going here, we can, yeah, mine needs a minute. So I have a lot of thick paint. So I'm just going to kind of smooth this out so it dries more quickly. And we'll start to do some of those blue trees on the sides while this is drying. Because I'll need another coat, so no big deal. And there's actually there's some brown tree trunks that are happening on the sides, but we'll just do the blue trees first on the sides and we'll kind of layer them in. They shouldn't interfere with the cabin too much. So I'm just going to clean my brushes. Now I'll talk about these big blue trees that are on the sides. We're doing one on the left and we're going to do boughs of like heavy boughs kind of style design tonight, which we haven't really done in a while. So if you want to try these tips and techniques with me, feel free. I'm going to use kind of a medium style brush. I'll probably use the number 5 at first just to see how it goes. I think it's going to give me the control that I want. And we're going to create boughs. And we're going to start with the darker blue. So I'm going to clean up my number 5 brush. Then I'm going to use the darker blue color because we're going to be doing layers of lighter blues on top of these boughs to really bring them to life. So we're kind of creating the overall basic shapes right now of our tree boughs, which will be really fun and different for us. So I'm getting a little bit of this blue paint on my brush. And we're going to start on the right-hand side. And I'm going to put my finger up here on the right-hand side. Now, what does a tree bough look like? It's a line that kind of comes in like that, right? It kind of comes up and it sweeps over and in. And then it might kind of like sweep under, right? That's maybe like a tree bough. What we're going to do is we're going to add, we can kind of add a little bit of texture to these boughs. So you can bring them in plain colors like this. So we're going to do just basic shapes to start. So bring in not too far in, just a little bit in. This is a little bit of a tree bough, just kind of coming in onto the page. So that's like a tree bough, just like a random tree bough that is just coming into the page, right? We're going to do more of these, but we're going to do some angles. So that one kind of came out straight. The next one, so as you're doing this, there's no rush. So just try to create one object and you can fill it in. but you're gonna see where I'm going with this. You're gonna do little bits of tree boughs. I'm just gonna do lots of different outlining just to show you. And they can come straight down. See how I'm creating tree brows that are kind of coming into the page. Some of these can come down, some can come out. And I'm just gonna fill these in. We're gonna do texture detail on top to bring them to life. But we're kind of doing a silhouette of a tree and tree boughs basically coming in. So play with your angle, play where it's a little wavy, play where it has like a little bit of motion, right? We're just doing single objects. We're not doing any texture yet. So play with the angle again. We're just filling them in. And visualize this is half of a tree that's coming into the picture. That's what we're going for from a composition perspective. This is half of a tree that is coming into our scene, into our viewpoint as an artist. You can always make these. We can always add more texture on top, right? Well, we're going to add a lot more in here, but this is just a starting place. Kind of like when we paint a mountain, we get the mountain shape in first, and then we can bring it to life in different ways. Maybe there's less gaps in between. Like for me, I'm going to close up some of these gaps a little bit. Just use your eye and just make refinements. This is all practice. We're all here to have fun. And I'll put a tree trunk coming down here. Maybe I'll just do one more kind of tree bough coming in. Maybe a little one down here. You can come down into your ground area a little bit if you want to. So that's a tree. And it does get a little wider at the bottom. So mine's fairly even. I'm going to make some of this on the bottom a little wider. Just so it like looks like the tree is bigger on the bottom. So I'm just going to make it a little wider down here. And this is pretty big. Like it's okay for it to be big. Okay. But you can see the tree, the house is still a central focal point. So I'm not crowding the house with the tree. It's just there as I'm looking, I'm peering through the woods and I'm seeing my A-frame in the woods. That's the intent here. And you're basically going to do the same thing on the other side. You can make some choices of like, if you want less to show up here, like less of a tree, more of a tree. I might do less of a tree on this side coming in just to like kind of balance out. I don't want it to be overwhelming. So I'm just going to do the same thing on the other side with a left tree coming in. But this is where our scene is really just going to kind of transform a little bit, which is kind of fun. And yes, we'll make this snowy, don't worry. We'll add lots of colors to bring this to life. But it's really fun taking different perspectives as we paint. So Jenny, you could do like a dark green here. You might have done that, or you might be doing a blue, right? If you did green trees. So you could choose any color you want.
Jenny, what color is it?
What did Jenny choose?
I went dark green.
Dark green, all right.
Yay.
Nice. She's from New Hampshire. You can't take green out of her blood.
I can't do blue trees. It just was not like I can't.
Good thing I don't care, Jenny.
I know.
Oh, I don't care at all. That's the best part.
I know. I just started the night and I'm like, okay, am I gonna do blue or am I gonna do green? And just as we started, I'm like, I gotta go green.
I
It's
just can't do it. You were open
No.
to it and you just made a choice.
Yeah. And I committed to it, so.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
I'm learning.
I know, seriously. So I'm good. I'm not gonna go all the way down my blue trees. I'm just gonna stay right there. They kind of look like black, like scissors coming in. It's fine. I'm not worried about it right now. We'll make them look nicer in a few minutes here. Just make sure these have like a nice coat of paint on them. And we'll go back and we'll just make sure our house is painted in. So for me, these are good enough for right now, these blue trees. I'm gonna clean my brush, go back to my brown, since my brown is now dry. We're gonna add a lot of texture on top of these trees, so I'm not worried if the blue trees in their current state look like patchy or not. They're gonna be just fine once we're done with them. But my brown house, my A-frame, I definitely want fully covered. We're doing pretty good on time. I always try to keep our classes to about an hour and a half. Sometimes we go over that based on the level of detail, but we'll see. We'll see tonight. It's also our Friday night late class, so we never know what's gonna happen here. Just gonna make sure everybody got in. Terrific. Trisha's still here. Great. So I'm just doing a nice coat of brown on this house and then let that dry. So we typically do things in like layers or in phases in these classes. So for us to do a final coat on our house, on our A-frame cabin, we'll let that dry and we'll go back and we'll do the texture on the trees. We'll do the fun snow-like texture on our trees. But I love that the colors are so different and that the composition is certainly different than something we've done in the past. All right. So what we'll do is we're gonna do a lighter blue color. I'm gonna put a little bit more white on my plate. And there's probably 2 or 3 blues on these trees and on these branches. So we're gonna start it simple and then we'll see how it escalates from there. I want you to find a brush. We don't always do this in these classes, but I want you to find a brush that you can use as specific texture for, like, I don't want to say like a leaf, but for like a good smudge of snow. So I'm going to make a lighter blue, and you can decide how much lighter. Pick and choose, and you could go for pure white or you could go for an in-between color. I'm going for an in-between color, as you can see. So this is my blue color for my trees is right here, and I'm going for this lighter one. This is significantly lighter. So I'm just gonna pick a color and start with it. And if I want to change my direction, I can. I might like adjust it a little bit. But we're doing, again, we did big heaving branches. We designed it that way. Now we're going to do snowy, like sub bundles on each of these. And they're going to be angled. So be very specific about how you angle your little snow clusters. Now I'm going to zoom my camera way down so I can show you how to do this. Because, you know, I do this all the time. All right. So we're going to start, just pick a side. I'll just start over here on my right. And I'll try to center this for you. I am going to do, and they're going to be kind of, you can start on the top side. I'm just going to do kind of a dab. And we're going to do little snow-covered pockets. And you can do, this is like little bits of snow, and you can play with how you want to add them. Snow on the top sides of these trees. Now this is a different style. We don't always do things like this. So they're a little spotted, but you don't have to have them be this spotted. You can kind of do some longer lines. You can kind of blend them in a little bit. And you can come down further too. You don't have to do just the top side. You can do the top, 2/3 of the branch if you want. But the darker blue is there for contrast on the underside, right? So play with this, play with the angle. You can do little lines, little bit of smudging with the tip of your brush in between. This is just a new texture for us to play with. So you could do most of it. And look, I'm leaving a little bit of the dark blue not touched on the bottom, but you could do most of the branch with this texture, right? I'm leaving just a little bit of the dark blue on the bottom, and I'm just doing, and they're all kind of downward. See how it looks a little snowy? We can do even more white paint on top of this too, right? To make it look really snowy. So play with this technique. If you don't like it, you don't have to do it. But this is just trying something new for our class tonight. And you can do little dabs, little dashes. We will do a second round of white paint on top of some of this to make it look really snowy. So this is kind of a two-part. But see how my brush is kind of angled down? I'm doing specific shapes coming down the boughs. I'll bring this up. You can play with that. It's kind of a fun look. This is a terrific example of how to add a snowy look or giving your trees a different texture by just trying something new. And this is just like a dotting technique, and I'm just doing like little dabs to kind of fluff it in, I guess. And I'm keeping a little bit of the dark blue on the underside of each branch, just a little bit. And that looks kind of cool. See how they're all angled down, kind of in a line.
Doing very well. How about yourself?
All right. So just play with this technique. I love that this is like a totally different technique for us.
No, I haven't heard from her.
All right. And we are going to be adding in, if you wanted to do it now, you can brighten some of this snow texture with even more of a lighter color if you want to. But how fun. So I'm gonna I'll do my camera all the way back. If anybody has any questions, let me know. But find a technique that works for you here and just go with it. I'm gonna come in with just a little bit of a lighter white and just do a little bit of like lighter touch-ups too, just while I'm in here on this tree. Oh, and the lighter one on top of this looks phenomenal. Like highly suggest it, ladies and gents. It really brings out the snow effect. And this is
I
such
actually love this. I don't know if
isn't
you
it
can
really
see
pretty?
this.
Oh, that looks great, Susan. So you did some more brush strokes versus dabbing. That looks great.
It looks, well, they're dabbing,
And you're
they're
sweeping.
quick dabbing brush strokes.
Yeah, that's it. That's art at its best. You're just experimenting, and that's
Yeah.
exactly what you should be doing. I love it. The dark contrast underneath looks really cool, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Really pretty.
And we are supposed to get snow tonight. I don't
Oh, it's
know.
happening. All right.
Yeah, I haven't looked out yet. Oh, this is awesome.
So cool. Love it. All right, and I'm gonna go to the other side. So everybody take your time. It does look really snowy, doesn't it? With the blues and the whites. Really cool. I'm sure Jenny's in green is still gonna look equally cool. So Jenny, you're gonna do a
Yeah, I'll
lighter
show
green,
you.
right? Yeah, look at that. So snowy. Oh, Jenny, yours looks great.
Oh, that's so pretty.
Oh, I love it. I can't wait to see everybody's. So fun.
It's so different when you're right on top of it and as compared to when you back up a little bit on
I
it.
know. You all are starting to loosen up a little bit. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Takes a lot of practice, doesn't it?
Yes.
Jean's loosened up too. She's really stepped outside of her comfort zone. All right. So sometimes, and this is such another good example of just playing with a different range of colors to see how it creates depth and dimension. And, you know, sometimes in these classes, we make the time to do a lot of this detailed work. But tonight's is such a good example of it, of if we took the time in a lot of our art to, you know, play with 3 tones of a given color, you know, what we could really create, what we could bring out. Yep, love this one. So fun. Trish, I hope you're having fun. So it's a really different kind of style than we've done before.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, cool. All right. So everybody just feel free to play around a little bit. And this is where you can kind of continue to evolve these trees kind of where you wish. You know, I'm adding a little bit more white snowy here and there. But this is good. We're letting our house, our A-frame dry. We'll move to that piece next. Once we're done, some of our snow and our tree texturing kind of detail. All right, so I'm just being a little playful here. Maybe we'll do a little flip and show, a little flip and reveal after this. I may add some brown trunks, ladies and gents, to the bottom of these trees just to ground them. If you want to, you can. In the inspiration, they had brown tree trunks, which I kind of liked. So I might just add like a little bit of a brown tree trunk down here. It doesn't need to come all the way down, but if that's something you wanted to add, you could. And I'll back this up a little higher. Oh, just kidding, I can't. I'll move this up. So I'm just gonna do a little bit of a brown tree trunk over here, let it dry. And then I'll give everybody a solid 3 more minutes to play with your trees. I wish Zoom had a timer built in. That would be really convenient. But I have to keep an eye on the clock here. And then I'm gonna put a tree trunk over here. And then we'll go to our A-frame house. If anybody wants to kind of start sketching on your A-frame house, maybe where you want your windows to be, where you want your doors to be, I'm going to use a pencil to do that. So I'll zoom this down to do a little sketching so you can see where we're going here. The door on this house is off center, which is kind of fun. So I'm going to start with my door, and my house is a little wet, but I think I can get around it here. So I'm just going to use a pencil and just draw my little door. And then I'm going to just draw my windows. It just, for me, this will help kind of get everything in place. You don't always have to sketch, but it helps kind of boost our confidence towards the end of, oh, I wish I had a window here. Like I could have drawn it and planned it that way, you know? So I have an off-center door and I'm doing 3 windows. And I'm gonna have this tall, skinny window at the top. That's really fun. Love that. So when you paint your windows and you paint your doors, it's really important that they're as straight as possible when you paint them. Otherwise, it looks a little less realistic. Oh, I'm scratching through my picture, my paper. Whoops. And then you can just start filling this in. There's a lot of there's some like black textured work, like paneling on the house. I'm just gonna do that after, but I'm just gonna use a light yellow and fill in my house, fill in my windows. My door is like a red pinkish color. Just take your time with filling in. I sketched the door and I sketched my little windows. You want to use a tiny brush of choice. So I have a little bit of white and yellow right here. I'm gonna make a light yellow color for my windows. And if your yellow is too like lemony, you can always make it a little, have an orange tinge by adding in a little bit of red if you need to like warm it up a little bit. So don't hesitate to like modify the color if you need to. So I'm gonna find a yellow that I like for my windows. Let's see. I think this should be fine. I can always change it if I need to. So all my windows will be this yellow color, which is not yellow enough. And you're gonna need 2 coats of yellow, maybe 3 even, painting on top of brown. So just have a little patience here as you fill in your windows. It's just gonna need a minute to dry, which is fine. There's plenty of elements on this house that we have to paint. And because we're doing so many layers of yellow on these windows, I'm not gonna strive to get them like perfect, the windows perfectly straight right away. I can try, but you're gonna bring in more paint, so just don't worry about it too much. It's holding up pretty good. I go right on the edges. Just find a nice small brush that you can trust and pay attention. Just go nice and slow along your lines. This is where if you like the detailed work, it's quite relaxing, but it's just knowing to go slow and enjoy the process. Some of you may find this tedious. Everybody's a little different. Don't forget to breathe. This is the calming part. Minus the stress of doing straight lines. Paying attention to the side of your bristles as you're painting. These windows are drying nice and quickly, which is terrific. I'm not gonna rush it though. I'm gonna paint my door oh, I don't know, an orange maybe, we'll see. We'll see what color I come up with here. You can outline your house with black paint. We're gonna also we're gonna add some snow. So if you wanted to add snow first on your house, you could. Painting my door, trying to get it nice and straight. Always tricky. My orange door will definitely need a second coat as well, which is no problem. And our little building here is starting to look like a building, not a tent anymore. Okay. There's also a chimney off the side of this house. So if you have a little brown, I'm gonna freehand my chimney, and I'm gonna do it now because I'm gonna put white snow on my roof, and I don't want that to disrupt my chimney. I want my chimney already to be there. So I'm just gonna do a little straight line chimney stack. You can decide how big or how small you want this to be. And this is gonna need a couple coats of brown. We should have done this before. Sorry, didn't realize. And it could be lighter. It could be a lighter brown too. It doesn't matter. So this is where we have fun with all these details. I'm going to do another coat for my yellow. My yellow is drying or dried. Be sure to size down if you need a smaller brush. Use a smaller brush if you have it. And one more coat of yellow might do it for me here. So I'm going to try to do really straight lines for my windows. Try is the verb, is the descriptor there. It's really hard to sometimes get super straight lines. But if we acknowledge that, maybe the universe will give us a break. I don't know. I could switch to a smaller brush, maybe. We'll see how that works. 2 coats of this yellow is working for me. The other thing is, we're gonna do black, like small black lines around these windows. I know there's all these details. You could also use a black ink pen. Great night to use a black ink pen or a Sharpie around the edges of these windows or on your house, right? You can use paint, but you can also use an ink marker or something if you wanted to. So I always encourage you to think outside the box on how you can kind of fine tune things. An ink pen or a marker may give you a more solid line as well. You might feel like you have a little bit more in control. This window is not drying well. It's all right. Okay. My orange door needs another coat. So there are also like 2 large trees in the foreground that we can consider adding if people still want to add those too. We have to have the house done before we add those big trees in the foreground. So you can decide as an artist if you want to add those or not. But my house is also going to have like a railing on the front of it too, which would be kind of cool. So I probably will add some of those trees just because I think they'll look really cool. Let me see what I have for black ink markers. Let me see what I got on hand here. Let's see what this pen does. I think I'd use a Sharpie. I think a Sharpie might be better because it's a little thicker. Let me see if I have a Sharpie here. I think a Sharpie would work well because it has a fine point. Again, you don't have to do this. I'm just showing you kind of what this could be here. I am going to I'll show you what it looks like to outline a window with a black Sharpie for consideration. Oh, that works magically. So if this offends you, I apologize, but this is just one thing you could consider. I love being the guinea pig and just showing you what your options are, right? So there's a window outlined with a black Sharpie. That worked. You could also use black paint with a tiny black brush. If you would like the thrill of doing that detail, you're welcome to. Okay. My window is not quite dry yet, so I'm going to stop there. Maybe I'll add some white snow on my roof. That'll be an easy thing to do as my other elements are drying. So you can add it right on the outside. And I'm just going to outline the house to start with some white. It's like a white brush stroke down. And you can decide how much snow you may want on your roof, right? So by starting with a brush stroke, you're going to get a certain width. You could decide if you want it to be thicker than that or not, right? The picture, there's quite a bit. And you can turn your canvas too, like on your tabletop. Like for me, I'm going to turn this. I'm a lefty. I tend to get pretty messy when I paint. So I'm just going to turn this to try to get a better angle. Painting right on top of that chimney. Okay. So there's a snowy roof. Not a ton of snow. I could double that line if I wanted to. I can make it a little more hefty by just making this line a little thicker. Which I will. I'll make it a little thicker. I'm going out into the pink area. And I'm letting the windows dry, right? So I do things with intent here. I'm letting everything dry so I can keep working on my other details as this firms up. So many details, but all certainly worth it. So everybody's kind of working on their own thing, which is exactly what you should be doing. Don't stick your finger in the snow and smudge it on your house like me. I'll have to go and touch that up. There's a lefty mistake for you. All right, I'm gonna let that dry. So I have a snowy cabin in the woods with a little white smoke coming up from your chimney with a teeny tiny brush. They used white in the inspiration, which is kind of fun. You could do a gray smoke. I kind of like the white. I'm just gonna be a little free flowing here. I'll bring this up so you can see it. I did a little swirly smoke pattern, I guess. A little whimsical. It's always good for the heart. So fun. You can use outlining your windows, outlining your doors with either a Sharpie, an ink pen, or using black paint. Highly recommend it. You could add slats in your house. Shingles, anything you want here. I'm gonna outline this window up top. Oops. Take your time as you're outlining. Don't rush it. My windows are not all dry, so I'm gonna come back and do some touch up there. You can see things are coming along. You can add in a railing if you wish on the bottom side. I'll show you what some slats look like in the house. I feel like my house really needs it. Luckily, I have a ruler. So I'm just gonna pick a couple of areas. Like paneling, basically. So I'm just going to start by doing a couple of horizontal style lines. My door just really smudged, so I'll fix that after. I'm just going to do 2 horizontal lines. And then I'll just do some vertical slats. So you can see what some of these black lines will do. My door is wet, so I'm going to kind of pause, but you can kind of get the gist here. How's this going for everybody? Are you loving it? Is it stressful?
Not stressed.
No, it's nice. It's really fun, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Really fun.
It is
It's-
really fun. Megan, can you make your picture bigger?
Closer to it.
Maybe.
Okay. Is that better?
Mm. Where are your railings? Can you show me?
I haven't done the railings yet. I did
Oh.
2 black slats, 2 lines in the roof. I'm going to do the railing down here. The railing is going to go just below the windows in front of the door. So I'm going to do a black line just
Yeah.
below the windows.
Gotcha.
Yep. Or you can
Thank
even
you.
do it, yeah, like right or at the same level as the windows if you wanted to. So I can freehand that because I don't think there's a ton of risk there. So I could go right under the windows, right in front of the door, and over and down. And then you can just do little lines coming down for the posts. I'm gonna go behind the tree, obviously. I'm just gonna go right in front of the door. So that's a little bit of a railing. And they put snow on top of the railing too, which I really like. So I'll probably do a little bit of like a white line on top of the railing. And they actually did detail work, like a little bit of like a lighter gray on each side of the railing bars too, which is kind of fun. So you can kind of pick and choose what details you want to do. My door needs to be repainted here. But I'm just taking my time. You can put a little snow on your roof. Let's see. I was gonna fix the brown on my house that I got white paint on. Okay. Maybe I'll use my Sharpie to do some, let's see. I should probably use a ruler here, but I'll try to freehand it. Vertical slats in my house. And you can also do a black line on the inside of your roof as well. So like where your snow is, I'm definitely going to do a black line right on the inside as well. So that's a little bit of extra depth. So you can pick and choose how much detail you want to do on your house. I'll probably put snow on my railing next so I can actually see it and it stands out. So there's a little bit of just vertical line texturing, kind of just on the middle panel of the house. You can decide to do more or less than that. I did a black line on the left side of my chimney. All these details. You can look at the inspiration as well and where they may have put things. They did a little bit of vertical paneling above the window on the top. That kind of looks good. You can do it wherever you want. I'm going to put a little bit of white on my railing so you can see that. And then I will shift to my big trees in the foreground. I know we are at 8:30 or so. I'll show you what those big trees look like if you wanted to do that. But I really want to do the snow on this railing. I think it'll look really nice. So on the top side of that black. And I can go right over the door. I'm going to go right over the windows. This railing is in front of all those things. And this looks awesome because it's a lighter color on top of darker colors. So the contrast is spot on. And we don't always do this many details. Most of you know that. We don't always do details like this. And sometimes it's fun to slow down and do some extra detail work. Sometimes we do. It depends on what we're painting. I would say tonight's class is on the more detailed side. So there's a little snow on the railing, and I'm going to do a little, this is a little thing. So if you want to do this, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. I'm making a light gray, and I'm going to do a light gray line on the left side of each of the posts for the railing. So this is going to add a little bit of extra. So you can see the railing posts. Look at that. So I'll always give you ideas in these classes. You can take what you wish. All right, let's see. That. So you can see how these little details really just kind of bring it all together. My door is smudged. I will fix it. Let me see if it's dry to fix. My ruler smudged it. Whoopsie. That's all right. Okay, so what I'll do for time's sake is you all keep doing your thing. I'll just go over some of these details again. I have a cute little A-frame in the woods. Some magic has happened here. My tent has transformed. I added white on the roof. Okay, for snow. I did add a chimney with a little chimney smokestack kind of. I did a fun little chimney smokestack coming up. I'll bring this a little closer. I have a railing in front of my house that I used a black Sharpie, and then I did a white line on top of that to give it snow. And then I used light gray on the left side of each of the posts for the railing to make those stand out. How fun is this? Look how straight my house looks with a ruler, ladies and gents. It's like the little things, isn't it? All right. Okay, are folks interested in seeing those big trees in the foreground? Give me a thumbs up or not. Okay, thumbs up, big trees in the foreground. Okay, so we'll do that in just a minute here. I'm gonna let my house dry for another moment before I paint more things on top. So you can wave things around, this and that. Now I'm putting 2 tree trunks in the foreground, like they are tall pines. these trees are not going to have branches on them. That might be a little scary for some of you. It will not be scary, I promise. I'm gonna let this dry. I'm very excited to see everybody's little cabins in the woods here. Let's see how dry my painting is. It might need another minute. Let's see what's wet. The only thing that's wet is my door. Which I can probably steer around with my big tree. So I'll get us set up for our big trees. You're welcome to use a ruler. You don't need to use a ruler. I'm going to freehand my trees just like I freehanded the other ones. I'm going to use my dark blue paint. And I'm going to use a medium-sized brush. I'm going to try using this 4 flat tip brush. It's actually not in very good condition, so let me see if I have another one. Yeah, this one's better. It's kind of like a 4 flat tip. These bristles are a little newer than my other one. And you talk about placement of where you want your big tree to be and then where it's going to end. So for me, I know where I want it to end. I want it to end right about here where my finger is, which I'll zoom this back up. Okay. I want it to end down here where my finger is. So I'm going to try to find like where this would be straight up. And for me, I do better with drawing lines down. So I'm going to put a little bit of water on my brush, a little bit of the dark blue paint. And I'm going to do a tree trunk. So this is where you have a little confidence and you just go slow. You do a nice straight tree trunk. If it doesn't get filled in all the way, don't worry. Just keep going. Keep on going. And then this tree trunk is it's gonna be wider than that. And it's gonna end down here. So see how where it ends down here? Now I could start painting on the bottom and I could say this is gonna be the widest part down here. So I could make my tree trunk a little wider. Just a little bit on the bottom. And then this is where you can figure out how big you want this tree to be. This is in the foreground. I'm going to make this about 1 inch, no more than 2 inches wide. It's going to go right on top of my house. Maybe over your window. It's a little scary, I know. But then your tree will start to appear in the foreground. I'm using this 4 brush and I'm pushing down and I'm using the width of this brush to craft my tree. So you can see by pushing weight onto your brush, the width that produces for you. Maybe it's the width of your tree. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's too big. But consider trying that. Just take your time and fill it in entirely. And then we are going to add a little bit of a lighter blue to one side of the tree. So in the picture, it's like a white to the right side. Start with a lighter blue and add a little bit of highlighting to the right side of the tree. So there's no rush. You're probably still painting that darn tree. Don't worry. Just doing a tree trunk here. You got it. Look at that. That was the easiest thing that's happened to me all day. Look at that. A blue tree trunk with a lighter blue strip on the side, and it adds a little bit of highlighting. I'm gonna do one more to the left side of the house. So I'm just adding 2 of these. This is where your forest. See how the beautiful dimension that created by adding that single tree trunk? Isn't that so cool? Really, it put our house in the forest, which is really fun. Okay. I'm gonna do another one. I'm gonna figure out where I want the bottom to be. I want the bottom of the second one to be about here. It's gonna be higher, closer to the house. And you can kind of figure out where you want it to be here in this area. So I'm just gonna confidently just pick a line and just go. So just take your time. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. Let's go nice and slow as you fill in these tree trunks. Get them to the size that you want them to be. Some of yours may be bigger, some of yours may be smaller. Doesn't matter. Our cabin is in the woods. It's where it should be. And all of these details have certainly put it there. Making these tree trunks straight again is by far one of the more difficult parts, but we just kind of embrace it for what it is. And make the bottoms of these trees a little bit wider if you want to. And then I'm going to take a little bit of a lighter blue and just dust the right side of this tree trunk with a little bit of a lighter color. You can do this as thick or as thin as you wish. And then you figure out what are any final details that I want to do for my picture tonight. You can also let it dry and come back to it tomorrow. We are heading into the weekend. You can put a little extra snow at the bottom of some of these trees if you want to. Some of you might be done for the night. You can put a little bit of extra snow at the bottom of these trees. Little snowy patches if you wanted to. Just using a little white paint and just a little bit of fun abstract. And a little extra snow at the bottom of these trees. A little bit of white just to kind of break it up a little bit. But I absolutely loved the inspiration for tonight, and I hope y'all did too. So glad everyone's here. Okay, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording.